we are starting to see that more and more. I mean, we get more and more Bitcoin treasury companies, but they're all coming more from, I would say, still from the Bitcoin space. So Bitcoin is then turn companies into Bitcoin companies. But I mean, absolutely, at some point, any company that is holding a lot of cash reserves needs to justify why they're not holding Bitcoin. I think we're slowly getting to that point. Maybe not yet, but in a couple of years, if you're a financial, like responsible for the treasury of a company, you might have to explain specifically why you're not holding any Bitcoin in your cash reserves when you have a lot of, I don't know, US dollar reserves, etc., in your treasury. So it's going to be interesting to see over time how that evolves. And yeah, I think inevitably will become a more and more important topic over time.
How do you look at the past, basically 1-2 years that happened with the ETFs, with the strategic Bitcoin reserve, with all the, it seems like very rapid pace adoption of Bitcoin as an asset?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it might seem, I mean, we're still just around 94,000 US dollars, right? So people would have said we should be at 500,000, 1 million maybe. So from that perspective, maybe you might say, okay, it's kind of a disappointing development, but I mean, sometimes we just overestimate how fast all these financial institutions are moving forward, how fast companies make decisions. And I think it's quite remarkable. On the one hand, I mean, the ETFs, they have been tremendous success, but also like more and more big institutional investors are starting to consider Bitcoin. If they're not already in Bitcoin, at least they now have to talk about in like banks, financial companies. They're starting to at least talk about Bitcoin. And I guess even if they're not into it right now, it just takes time for some of those bigger institutions and companies to at some point decide, okay, no, we are going to jump into Bitcoin. And I mean, it involves a lot more than what we do. We can just say, okay, let's set up an account somewhere, we smash buy Bitcoin. We don't have to think about managing risks for like other investors because we're just our own investors. We don't have to justify our safety system, etc., how we store Bitcoin, and all that takes a lot of time. And it's just amazing to see how the narrative is shifting. And even this week, right now, Bloomberg starting to talk about how Bitcoin has traded a little bit differently to the Nasdaq for just maybe a couple of days, but it's an interesting start.
Yeah, this decoupling is interesting. The D word is getting used more and more for the even traditional financial space. I mean, yesterday, for the people, we are now recording on 23rd of April, so this podcast will come out in May, so it's a little further down the line. But yesterday was the day where Bitcoin went up and the whole market basically went down, which is an amazing sign that the market slowly gets it. But I'm very skeptical, honestly, because there's like it's just a day or two. It's not a long trend, and it can also be just a coincidence. So,
no, absolutely. I mean, we've seen already a couple of times where people are celebrating the big decoupling of Bitcoin from other assets. And but I think the more and more we are seeing these kind of one-time events where people are starting to talk about decoupling, it's also starting to form a narrative around Bitcoin, right? So that more and more people are thinking about, wait a minute, why are people talking about decoupling? Why are they talking about Bitcoin being digital gold? Is it maybe something we have to look at? And anytime we are seeing these 1, 2, or 3-day events where Bitcoin kind of decouples from financial markets, I think is just embedding this narrative more and more into the mainstream or the financial mainstream.
So basically, when there's like a day or two where there is actually decoupling on that day, because mainstream news and mainstream media is reporting on that, there is a kind of narrative spinning around that it's actually decoupling, and this could further decouple Bitcoin from the rest of it because there's a narrative starting.
In a sense, yes. And I mean, it's also showing that it could trade differently than other assets. But yeah, of course, it takes a lot of time for people to see it that way. And I mean, I don't have to tell you as a Bitcoiner, Bitcoin has all the characteristics to be like a decorrelated asset or like a safe haven asset, a hedge against uncertainty. But in the end, if we are being honest, many market participants still see it as a risk-on asset, so as an asset that trades when there's like when stocks go up, Bitcoin also goes up. Yeah, it just takes time to for investors, for market participant to understand what Bitcoin truly is, and that it's not just a short-term speculative flip where you can make a lot of profit in the short term.
How important do you think is that narrative shift in the mainstream media? Is this just a consequence of Bitcoin getting adopted, or is it actually making headways in the adoption for Bitcoin?
So I think it would have happened either way, like this shift in narratives. But of course, they are now reinforcing mechanisms. So if Bitcoin behaves a certain way, maybe even if it's not true yet, and mainstream media starts talking about it, then it's just reinforcing the idea that Bitcoin could be a safe asset or a decorrelated asset to traditional financial markets. And yeah, it's not one or the other, but it's just something that's reinforcing each other.
Yeah, and it helps a lot that people like Larry Fink, who are very respected in the traditional financial space, say, "Oh, it's a flight to flight to safety." I think he said,
Yeah.
"A flight to quality," something like that. That really helps to shift the narrative in the mainstream media, because there's always like what we Bitcoiners talk about and what the world actually thinks currently, because we maybe are. I'm curious actually on that question, because of there's always this question of how many people actually understand Bitcoin. We have the numbers of how many people have exposure to Bitcoin. They range from like 300 million to 600 million people, something like that. But how many of those actually do self-custody? How many run their own nodes? How many have actually understood Bitcoin and have more of like 100 hours in the bank of it? It's a hard thing to accomplish. And then it's like those people who have understand it and talk to each other have very different narratives than 99.9% of the world actually currently has, and we have to push that further somehow.
Yeah, I think it's still a very relatively low number, which are really like hardcore Bitcoiners or understand Bitcoin, what it is or what it might be. I mean, I'm not even sure I fully understand Bitcoin or anyone actually fully understands Bitcoin. I mean, there's so much to unpack regarding Bitcoin, and we don't really know yet all the potential it has down the line. So, but yeah, the ones that at least understood the fundamental proposition of Bitcoin, I think it's still also very relatively low number compared to all the holders we have that are holding Bitcoin. I mean, we have so many holders today that just have Bitcoin exposure via ETFs and other products. And they don't self-custody their Bitcoin. And I think that makes a huge difference already if you like a Bitcoiner who says, no, but I have to hold my own keys and have that, because that's what's it about, right? Bitcoin self-sovereignty and being free from political control, etc. So yeah,
absolutely. It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm also very much the opinion that nobody really understands everything. It's just too deep of a topic that you can fully understand something, but there's like a degree of it, and maybe we have to cut off, like if you understand 60% of it you kind of grasp it, and you count as someone that understands it, or whatever the percentage is. What do you think is the biggest thing, or like the biggest area in Bitcoin where you still want to learn more about Bitcoin?
I mean, me personally, I come more from the, let's say, market side, or the side where you look at transformative potentials of Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining in Africa, etc. So I for sure lack a bit of more the technical understanding of Bitcoin, the like on the program level, coding level, etc. I think that's some areas I would like to catch up a bit more. But everyone has like their niche around Bitcoin, and then some areas they understand better and less well.
It's very important to be aware of where you still want to learn more, and the technical aspect. I think technically, especially, it's very hard to understand everything in great detail, especially if you go deeper on all the aspects. Really cool. One thing that was before, when you talked about the price, why we are not at 500,000 or 1 million or something like that, I ask myself that a lot, actually. For me, it's a blessing. It's like I'm so grateful for that, because I would have a lot less exposure to Bitcoin if Bitcoin would have shot to like 1 million last year. But why do you think this is? Like, for me, it's so obvious to see all the developments that are happening, and all the questions that are kind of in Bitcoin kind of already solved. And if you look back 10 years, there were so many open questions that still do be interested to figure out, like the block size wars we had the ETFs. Now we have so many things that we have seen. Can Bitcoin withstand that? Can Bitcoin actually reach those levels? We have seen so many of that already, that it's kind of unbelievable that we are still at just 100K.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, but also, I mean, I'm not going to say it's something about market manipulation or something, because I don't think so. I think it just comes down to mainly information asymmetry. As we spoke about, some people already see the value proposition, some don't. So we also have a lot of people ready to sell at 100K, and we've seen people sell at 100K. So it's just like, for me, it comes down to information asymmetry and people not grasping what Bitcoin is yet. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, of course, we've seen big demand by MicroStrategy, by ETFs, but I think it's not as significant yet that justifies to me that we had to scream like there's market manipulation going on or something. Of course, there's always manipulation going on in markets, irrespective of Bitcoin, but I don't think that's the reason why we are at the price where we are yet. It's, yeah.
Some people also confuse, in my opinion, buying and selling with market manipulation. It's like,
exactly.
People say, oh, but what if this big OG sells a lot of Bitcoin and manipulates the market? And like, that's not like, that's a free market. That's buy and sell, supply and demand. That's normal.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
I mean, buy and sell, supply and demand is just what is natural. And I mean, you could argue there's some, if it were true that exchanges don't hold the Bitcoin they actually have, then it's in a sense market manipulation or suppression. But I'm not sure that this is actually the case, or like I don't think they can to such an extent inflate the supply on exchanges without having so many, like the Bitcoin actually backed, and that it has an effect on the price, where if without exchanges we would already at triple the price or something. So yeah.
It's just a short-term thing, I think.
Exactly.
You can do it short-term, but I mean, we have seen examples like FTX. How many Bitcoin did they actually hold? Like 2 or something like that. some ridiculously small amount of Bitcoin they actually held, versus how many they actually should have held. So it's just a question of time. If BlackRock or anyone actually does that. I mean, BlackRock, if they do it, they probably are a little bit smarter than FTX. But but if someone does it, I think it's just a matter of time till the thing is crashing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look right now at the institutions holding the Bitcoin, like Coinbase holds the majority of Bitcoin for Bitcoin spot ETFs, and they are all highly regulated. And I don't think they have anything to gain by pretending that there's Bitcoin that they actually don't have, because the risk of this coming out and blowing up is way too high for like Coinbase or even. I mean, I don't see why BlackRock should pretend that they don't have the Bitcoin they have. I mean, that would be, on the one hand, it's still a relatively marginal business for those asset managers. So it's simply not worth the reputational risk to say, okay, let's pretend we have the Bitcoin while we don't actually have them. So I don't really see why they should do that. Yeah,
it's a good point. It's they don't have an incentive, and I'm a big believer in incentives. Like if someone has a huge incentive to manipulate the Bitcoin price, and at the same time, if he gets caught, doesn't blow up his own business, like Coinbase would blow up his own business if they come to know of like, oh, they just have like 100 Bitcoin or something like that, and they should have like 1 million or some whatever the amount is they are holding. That would basically ruin their whole business and would probably bankrupt then. I don't know, but probably. So why would they risk something we know an exchange on its own without doing the tricks is quite profitable? So why the heck would they do it?
and I mean, Coinbase is not itself that much in the accumulating Bitcoin business themselves. They are not holding too many Bitcoin. So why? I mean, it doesn't make sense for them to suppress price to be able to themselves accumulate cheaper, because we are not really seeing them buying that much Bitcoin. So yeah, I think around that area, we can't be for sure, but it's, to me, it makes more sense that they have the Bitcoin they are selling and not that they not paper Bitcoin in a sense.
But yeah, it's kind of unbelievable that we already are where we are with also strategic Bitcoin reserves. What do you think is next for Bitcoin? What is the next thing that you kind of foresee?
I mean, what we are talking about right now is Bitcoin reserves, obviously, of countries. I don't know who's going to be the next country doing that. I think that's something that's going to happen at some point. Not sure if the US is actually going to actively buy Bitcoin again. But yeah, I think around that topic we'll see more and more happening. And for sure, we spoke about the Bitcoin treasury companies adopting Bitcoin. I think that's also, I mean, it's already a hot topic right now. It's being discussed in the Bitcoin circle, and I think that's one thing that's going to become more and more relevant over the coming years.
Yeah, it's the topic that Bitcoin will drain the monetary premium from all other assets slowly, and we're seeing just the beginning of that. I think right now.
Yeah. It's. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. It's just a few crazy Bitcoiners doing that as a treasury strategy, and maybe, of course, you have Tesla, etc. But it's just the beginning of people thinking about putting Bitcoin reserves on balance sheets, etc. Yeah.
How do you think this will go when monetary premium will continue to be absorbed by Bitcoin from real estate, from stocks, from treasuries, from basically everything that is qualifying as a store of value currently?
What do you mean, as in consequences, or
the consequence of that? If Bitcoin is more and more doing that, how will the global asset market basically change when Bitcoin is the primary or maybe even the default asset for everyone to use as a store of value?
I mean, it's a tough question to answer. It depends on the speed that is happening, because if it's happening relatively fast and let's say real estate is increasingly becoming unattractive as a store of value, we will see like severe consequences on these kind of markets with prices dropping. And of course, many people have maybe used their real estate as collateral, and right, if that goes down, it's not ideal if your collateral drops in value against what you've borrowed. But to be honest, it's hard to say how that's going to happen and the consequences.
I'm wondering if real estate actually ever drops in value when you compare it to US dollar, because for me it's like then it is crashing already and probably will crash against Bitcoin, but US dollars is probably crashing more than real estate. It's like the scarce asset versus the infinite asset, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast, and if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.